Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to Saturday. It was sort of a sleeping Saturday, and I took full advantage of sleeping Saturday. I slept in. I never sleep in. As a matter of fact, I woke right up at 4 o'clock, and my freaking kids were still up watching TV at 4 o'clock. I was like, get to bed. I sort of chastised them for bad habits. And then I was just like, oh, the couch you were watching TV on looks very comfortable. And I was like, well, I'll just chant one round on the couch sideways. Here's a little lesson about chanting japa. Never sit sideways or never say I'm laying down to chant this one. It doesn't work. That one doesn't work. You got to sit up like... Got to sit up like
sit properly.
Sit properly, right? It's a famous. So anyway, I slept in and it was good. I needed to sleep in. I had a tough day yesterday. Yesterday was a tough day.
You're doing your taxes.
Oh, don't even go. It was everything. It was everything. You ever had one of those days where you just can't get outside?
Yeah.
Because you've got like these urgent, important things, and you're like, and then I get all depressed. Like this is my life I've created. That I'm on the phone and on a computer all day long. This is my life. Come on. I'm an adult. I don't have to do this.
No,
you ever feel like I'm an adult and I can do whatever I want?
When you're a child, you didn't have to do it. Now that
I know, but I'm an adult. I can
choose
choose what I want to do. Why? How did I choose this? I'm taking on too much. And then I got into the picking up kid thing. That never ends.
Raghunath.
And I drive a truck and gas is high. Good morning, everybody.
Let it go, Raghunath. Let it go.
But it's a new day and it's a new slate. I'm shaking up the Etch-a-Sketch. Everything's new and bright. And it's Q&A day. And we were allowed to sleep in because it's sleeping Saturday. It's 8 o'clock. If you're listening to this on Facebook, we do this every Saturday and Sunday. We sleep in at 8 o'clock because usually Monday through Friday, we're up at 6. Now, of course, if you're listening on Facebook, that means something, but you can always watch it after it's recorded, or you can go to Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Stitcher, Spotify, and listen to the podcast whenever you please. But there's a group of weird fanatics here that like to wake up at 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock and follow our nutty schedule when we're traveling called Zoomers, and they get on Zoom. And if you want to be on Zoom, you can too. You have to go to wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. Then you get the secret codes and you can enter the chambers. So we've got about 92 people here today. And it's Q&A day. Any announcements before we dive into this, Mara?
We have a Bhakti recovery group meeting at 9:30 this morning. And Nityananda Chandra's Shloka study group is at 9 a.m. right after the show. And then tomorrow's the global puja for Ukraine, right?
That's right. Yeah.
It starts tomorrow right
straight
after
from
the
our show right into the Ahobalam puja.
Yeah.
That's my little I really want to go to Ahovalam too on pilgrimage. I've got an idea. These Nrsingadev temples of South India, very, very interesting. I want to go to the one I want to go to, the cave. you don't swim in. You just like sort of like, I don't know. You
Wade.
wear those trout fishing boots that go up to your chest, and you wade in. And the water's like waist high, and then you have darshan in the water.
We got to get a Wisdom of the Sages couple. Like Sarah Koreski missed out on this, but we got to get a Wisdom of the Sages couple to get married in a Hobolim in that cave in the water, and then broadcast it.
You know, I tell you, this is another thing I love about Bhakti. It just goes to places that you don't think spiritual paths can go to. Just like, thanks to Instagram and you can videotape everything and post it. And did you see the posts of the boat festival in Vrindavan?
I've seen posts on that. I mean, I've been there for it before.
Who can think this stuff up? They fill the courtyard with water, so it's about 2 feet deep. And then they decorate the entire. If you didn't see this, it's unbelievable. Just search Boat Festival Vrindavan. Then they make flower petal designs, but like beautiful designs. And then they take the deities off the altar, put the deities in a boat,
Swan boat.
and then and then just walk them around like it's a boat day. It's all of this stuff is transcendental, Krishna conscious Barbie and Ken, isn't it?
No, Raghunath. It's more.
It is. You
Barbie
didn't
and
play
Ken.
with Barbies or Kens. I
a
play
whole
with
different
GI
idea.
Joes. No, because you have like the Malibu Barbie. She gets a car, right? You have like boating GI Joe with the scuba diver outfit. This is all different adventure things, but it's that same type of youth enjoyment, but we're getting it as old men and women. But we're doing it with the deities. It's really like, it's out of this world. And that's what makes it, believable. It all makes sense.
It's so crazy. It just might be true.
It's so crazy. It just might be true. The Lord wants to go on a boat too. Why not? You want to go on a boat? So does the Lord.
All right. Well, in any case,
You want to
the
go on a
Lord
swing?
The Lord
So
will be
does
in
the
that.
Lord. You want to wear a mask? So, right? You ever see the mask festival, Mara? Like if they worship Jagannath, they put on different masks on Jagannath. Like on Ram's appearance, they put on a Ram mask. Nrsingadev's appearance, they put on a Nrsingadev. It's masks. Come on.
All right. Well, in any case, it'll be live broadcast from a Hobolim tomorrow.
Yes.
So right after our show, people can get in. That's the puja for the people of Ukraine. That's the first segment of it, right? There'll be 3 throughout the day. And people are asking for a link for that. Just go to our Instagram page, Wisdom of the Sages, or go to Global Puja for Ukraine on Instagram, and you'll find links there.
I'm excited. I hope.
And then also there's an interview tomorrow.
Tomorrow we have a great interview with Malati Devi.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be good. She's old school from that hardcore 60s.
She's like, in one sense, like one of the, like super old school. She was a character.
She was a character.
You read, which book was it? Was it
Chasing
Shama
Rhinos.
Sundar's book, or was it in Chasing Rhinos that's talking about her? Like she's driving around on a motorcycle back in '67 in San Francisco. Like she's like this.
She was
super
16 years
cool-
old,
yeah, girl. She was, and then she, she took all that wildness and just like gave it all to Prabhupada and to Bhakti and to Krishna and just did amazing things with her life.
I'm going to pick her brain for some Beatles stories because she
Okay.
hung with the Beatles.
Yeah.
She knows everybody. She's cool.
Yeah.
All right. I hope I didn't throw anybody off with the mask and the boat stuff. Some people are like, what? Wait a second. I'm signing off. Or maybe I got some new people. What? Masks? Boats? All right. I can go there.
I'm in.
All right. Are you ready? Let's do it.
I'm ready. You got a question for me?
I got some issues. That's what I got today.
No tax questions, please.
No. All right. Here's a question for you on Q&A day. This is from our good friend, Kaylee Dossie. She's an other.
Part-time
Zoomer, a steady other. We're going to call that a zother.
Okay.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead is known as Rishikesh.
Hold it.
Or the-
You're jumping ahead, Raghunath.
Oh, I missed a
We're going to
paragraph.
start at the beginning of that one.
I was like, that's an interesting way to start a letter. Like, start telling me stuff. Actually, guys, you are great. You are so great. You are influencing people to change their lives. And I just want to say it's simply wonderful service that you all do together. I can't explain how much it means to me personally. Thank you, Kaylee Dossie.
Where's Kaylee from?
I don't know.
You didn't
You
mention
find out?
that.
No.
Could be anywhere.
Mhm.
People are really from all over.
Yeah.
There's people everywhere. I can't explain. Okay. The question I have running now is how to have the right understanding about sense control. There are just too many options of how to balance my responsibility on the one hand and my surrender to the will of the personality of Godhead on the other. By his will, everything happens. So even if I am trying to control the mind and senses by my intelligence, if things aren't sanctioned by God, I will fail.
Okay.
Nice way to put it. I tend to congratulate myself if I did control my senses and blame myself if I couldn't control them. Yet, how much was I the doer anyway? Nice way to put it. We are told we are not the doer. We are told it is the false ego that thinks it is the doer, when everything is being carried out in actuality by material nature or prakriti. She sounds very learned, huh? And false ego is stupid to believe it is the doer. Ahankara vimuratma karta aham iti manyate. She quotes the Gita from 327. Here's a clip from that same purport. The materialistic person has no knowledge that ultimately he is under the control of Krishna. The person in false ego takes all credit for doing everything independently. I always do this. And that is beyond the symptom of his nescience. I'm always like, yep, look what I did.
That is the symptom. Yeah.
That is the symptom. Okay. The personality of Godhead is known as Rishikesh, or the master of the senses of the material body. So how do I have any ability to master my own body, which is demanded in so many ways for me to master?
Okay.
Don't eat too much. Don't eat too little. The do's and the don'ts seem to be up to me, and at the same time, not up to me. After many years of trying my level best to chant Hare Krishna daily, I often still come up against the question of how do I actually understand what is my part of the deal? And then what does it mean that I am not the doer or the controller? I hope I can make a difference in this world, even in the face of many mistakes, trials, and tribulations in my life. If you can shed some light, please help me out by your kindness, by your kind benevolence. I don't mind if you edit or simplify this question so everybody can get something out of it. I know it's kind of a long question and maybe confusing. Sincerely, a part-time Suma. You know that song?
I do.
All right.
I do.
Go on. Golf clap. Thank you. I do. You like it?
Okay, so this is an interesting question, and I think for some of our listeners, they'll be more familiar about what she's speaking about, and for others, they'll be less familiar. But this is a common question in philosophy in general. The question of agency, like who is responsible for anything getting done, and it's a big conversation in Vedanta, and it's a big conversation in the Bhagavad Gita, and it's interesting because the way that the Gita is written and expressed, you could, like for any particular action, like say I just pick up my cell phone, and I make a call. Was I the one that did it, or is it that God is the ultimate controller of everything, and ultimately God facilitates that? Or it's also said that the material energy is responsible for everything. There are these three factors that are being brought up. There's the self, or the soul, or the Atma. There's Ishvara, or in literally the controller. You can say the Paramatma, God within the heart. And then there's the material energy, Prakriti. Right, so there's these three. They're all involved in anything in the material world getting done. And in different verses of the Bhagavad Gita, different verses will emphasize the importance of one of those factors over the others. And so as you read it, it could sound confusing, as like there are verses that say that, actually, let me see, I'll put one up. Like this is from the 15th chapter, right? It says the embodied spirit, so that's the soul, the Atma, the master of the city of his body, the master, that means, it sounds like they control their body, right? The embodied spirit, master of the city of the body, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature. Okay, so it sounds like the person in the body doesn't do anything. It's all the modes of material nature. How can we understand that? I mean, like, what does that mean? That the modes, that the material energy is carrying out things and it really has nothing to do with me. Don't I make the choice to do any particular activity? Well, there's two things involved in that. One is that really all I do is desire something. Like even when I picked up my cell phone, I desire to do it, but really that desire somehow becomes facilitated by the material energy, and it moves my arm, it lifts my arm, it grips the phone, it lifts the phone. How that happens, actually, I don't know. And really my ability to do that, I may desire it, and it may or may not be carried out by the material energy. Like I might desire to fly right now. And you know, if the material energy facilitates it, then I'm doing it. Then who really did it? It was the material energy, not me. I just desired it. So in one sense, material energy is carrying out everything. So this verse is emphasizing that, right? That in one sense, we don't do anything. We can also think of like the virtual reality thing like that too, right? Like if you're all plugged into a virtual reality, you might desire to do something, but it's really the programming that's carrying everything out. And you're just sitting there, you know? Then the next verse says, when, however, or then it says, nor does the Supreme Lord, okay, the third factor, assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. In other words, God isn't responsible for whether what you did was good or bad. You made that decision. The material energy carried it out. And so although he's the supreme controller, he's not responsible for your karma. You are. Right. So it says, nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities, anyone's good or bad karma. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge. When, however, one is enlightened with the knowledge by which nescience is destroyed, then their knowledge reveals everything as the sun lights up everything in the daytime. So that knowledge means understanding these three and how they work together. There's the idea. Well, let's go through the question a bit. There was at one point Kaylee said, it's by God's will that everything happens. So yes, in one sense it is, but that will is responding to your desire, right? In other words, like when we have desires, like saying, hey God, I want something. And then whatever happens, God has to sanction, and then ultimately it's carried out by the material energy. So ultimately we're responsible. And then Kaylee said, I tend to congratulate myself if I did control my senses and blame myself if I couldn't control them. Okay.
Interesting, isn't it?
Well, you see, because the thing is this, it's every choice that we make facilitates either the expansion or the contraction of our freedom and our ability to control, right? Including controlling our own senses. So it's like sometimes like people get drunk, right? And they do things under the influence of alcohol, right? Like we call it DUI, right? Driving under the influence. Now, once you drink a little bit of alcohol, you start doing things that you don't normally do. You start drinking more, you're doing things like crazy things like that you would never do if you hadn't fallen under the influence of something. So in one sense, it's taking your freedom away. You're losing your sobriety. You're losing your ability to make good decisions. And now you're like, for instance, like say you're really drunk and someone comes up to you and they can influence you to do something really stupid that if you had your wits, you wouldn't do. You know what I'm saying? With me on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Been there, done that.
Okay. So is it the fault of the alcohol that you made the decision that you made? Well, no. Well, you made the decision to drink the alcohol. So once you made that decision, you began to lose your freedom to think clearly. You know, that was your choice. And so in one sense, the alcohol did make you do it. Like you would have never done this without the alcohol, but you did choose to drink the alcohol. So there's different factors that are coming in. You know, sometimes you use that airplane analogy, right, Raghunath? You make a choice to get on an airplane.
That's your karma. What you do on that airplane, that's your free will.
Yeah, well, sure. And well, it was your choice to even step on the airplane. Like that was a manifestation of your will, right?
Yeah.
And then, but once you made that decision, you've limited. Now you're right. Now your karma is that you're on that plane for the next 7 hours, and there's nothing you can do about it, right? And now you have limited freedom within that scope. And then once you've burned off that karma and you landed on the ground again, now your freedom expands again. It opens up again.
Mm.
So when it says that the modes of material carry out everything, in one sense it is like I can't do anything without material energy agreeing to do it, right? Without it, I really don't do even open my eyes. I can't do it on my own. It has to be done for me. I can only desire it. And even decision making, that becomes influenced by the modes of material nature, because with every decision I make, I may be contracting my freedom, and I may be doing stupid things that I would never do because I've made previous choices that are clouding my ability to see clearly. And the material energy is covering me in that sense. And ultimately, everything's dependent on God, right? Like, in other words, the material energy is his energy, right? So he's sanctioning whether the material energy functions in a particular way or not. So, Kaylee mentioned, after many years of trying my level best to chant Hare Krishna daily, I often still come up against the question, how do I actually understand what my part of the deal is? And what then does it mean that I'm not the doer or the controller? Well, the thing is, you're held responsible for all of your decisions. And those decisions are either going to facilitate, the expansion or the contraction of your ability to control your own senses, right? Whether you have the strength to control your senses or whether you become controlled by your senses is something that's happening at a moment by moment, choice by choice kind of progression. Every choice that you make that's dharmic, right? It begins to expand your freedom to control your senses. And every choice that you make in the other direction, it begins to weaken. It's kind of like you're saying, I want to be an illusion. Every time you make a choice towards illusion. And once you do that, it becomes a little bit harder to make the next, to make the next step. So really, there are these three factors. There's the self, there's the material nature, and there's the Paramatma. The self desires, then the Paramatma, according to our karma, sanctions. You have a desire to fly. Well, you can't fly like a bird. I'm not going to sanction that. But if you want, I can sanction that you can fly like in an airplane. You want to enjoy food. Well, according to your food can be supplied according to your desire. But according to your karma, you may get food that that's more or less enjoyable. So that Paramatma is playing the role where it's fulfilling desires, but according to our previous activities. There's those two. There's our desire, and then there's what the choices that we've made in the past, and that manifests in our future. And this whole question has been asked in the context of our ability to control our own senses, our ability to be self-disciplined, right? And so if we want that, what it means is we need to recognize the role of the self, the role of the Paramatma, and the role of material nature. Controlling my senses means controlling material nature. I can desire to do that, and according to the strength of my desire, the Paramatma will facilitate or not facilitate that desire, right? Facilitate it to some degree, but to what degree? So we need to recognize the influence of the material energy, right? Choice by choice, we need to expand our ability to take control of our own senses. We need to keep moving in the direction of freedom. And through that, through our prayers and through our actions, we need to call for the grace of the Paramatma to help us do it. It's all three are involved. When we turn to the Paramatma and we say, you know what, I'm being controlled by my senses, and I don't want to because they're dragging me away from you. And I know that that's because of the decisions that I've made in the past. I know that. And they're still calling me at every moment. But what my real desire is I want to serve you. I want to take my senses and offer them back to you. I know that that's my nature, and I know that material energy is pulling me away from that. I'm asking you for your grace, and I'm going to demonstrate to you that I'm serious about this, right? I'm going to demonstrate by starting to make better decisions, but ultimately I'm dependent on you, ultimately I'm dependent on you to give me the power to overcome the influence of the senses. So Krishna will say that this material energy of mine is very difficult to overcome, but that one who surrenders unto me can easily cross beyond it. So all three of these are involved, in the control of your senses. There's the material nature, there's the self, and there's the Paramatma. What is your role? Your role is to, on one hand, it's a combination of one's endeavor and and God's grace. Your role is to make the endeavor and also to call upon God for God's grace. And through that combination, you could be granted the ability to control your senses, keep them focused, and made an offering to God. I hope that covers it.
I like that. I like how you wrapped it up there. It's your endeavor and God's grace. It's your endeavor and God's grace. It's not just your endeavor.
Yeah.
We're not going for that. There's a special mercy factor we get lifted up with.
That's right.
In our mind, we think we're up to. In our mind, we think like, I have to do this. Then there's a tension there too. I have to do this to become qualified for God's grace. And then God sees the sincerity and then reciprocates. And that whole thing about controlling the senses, it brings you to sattva. If you do it with the right intention, it brings you to sattva guna, the mode of goodness. And from there is just more freedom anyway. But it's ultimately that freedom is coming from God. And that's what the devotee never forgets, where the tyagi or the yogi can actually sometimes forget. I'm doing this. I'm controlling my senses.
Power. Yeah.
Yeah.
You think about it, like two people walk past the liquor store, right? For one person, it's like it means nothing to them, right? Like I walk by liquor stores every day and it means absolutely nothing to me. Like there's absolutely nothing within me calling me to go in there and buy a bottle of alcohol. Zero, right? But another person will walk by that same store and it's almost like, oh,
a magnetic pull.
Yeah, like it's like a desperate challenge not to walk in there, and buy a bottle of vodka or something like that. It's like, so why are we in these different situations? It has a lot to do with the decisions that we've made previously, and that's what 12-step programs, they're about. That, hey, you've become so weak that you have trouble making the right decisions, and you're being controlled now. So we need help to get you over that. But what do they also teach? That ultimately you have to recognize, God, I need your help, right? So it's a call for, it's both sides are there. One's own endeavor, and as well as the reception of the grace. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Kaustubha.
I hope that's been helpful.
What's you got for me?
I got a question from Holly, who's also known as the Vedic Vessel.
The Vedic Vessel. Hi, we're the Vedic Vessel from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
That's where she's from.
Vedic
So
Vessel.
Holly is the Vedic Vessel. She's an other from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And she writes, I have recently listened to an episode where you all discussed having a healthy fear of Maya, right? A healthy fear of the illusory material energy. A few of my struggles in this lifetime are anxiety, fear, and jealousy. Okay, popular ones. I'm at the point in my spiritual journey where I'm really starting to grasp the concept of Maya, and have realized that all of my triggers to these fearful anxieties are forms of Maya. To name a few: social media, indulgent eating, substances, parties, and sexual content. For my own focus, well-being, and peace, I've decided to personally avoid these triggers as much as possible. My partner, on the other hand, has a very addictive personality and is involved with many of these modes of Maya, and it's hard to witness. Okay? My question is, here's the question, Raghu, you ready?
Yep.
Could you guys pull any advice from the literature and or give your opinions and wisdom on how to navigate feelings of fear, anxiety, insecurity, and discomfort when seeing your partner engaging in these things? My partner is not Krishna conscious, but I have been trying my best to help him to understand that indulging the senses isn't going to provide him with true happiness. I'm fairly new to Krishna consciousness, but once I discovered your podcast about 6 months ago, I've been deep diving and bobbing for the apple of Krishna's heart ever since.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated with the culture, spirituality, and wisdom of ancient India. And I've actually been studying and practicing with a young Vedic astrologer for over a year now. I listen to Wisdom of the Sages for multiple hours per day, and I have been implementing the knowledge into every moment of my day. I would like to offer
hours a day. That's pretty
multiple hours.
That's pretty cool.
I would like to offer a huge loving thank you to all of you for your service and leading us on this beautiful path of bhakti, and for taking the time to read my question. Okay, well, that was...
It's amazing. Sometimes you can have a job where you can listen to things for multiple hours a day. Like, imagine if you worked in a toll booth place.
You could do it.
You could do it all day long. Listen to the Bhagavatam. It might be the best job in the world, working in that toll booth.
Fumes are a little bad, but...
Fumes are bad. Fumes are bad, but...
All right, so that's the question. Yeah, that's the question, Raghu. Any wisdom about navigating feelings of fear, anxiety, insecurity, and discomfort when seeing your partner engaging in these unfortunate behaviors?
You're in the right place to deal with fear and anxiety. Krishna consciousness just does that. You zoom out and see things in the most biggest picture. It helps you really deal and cope with changing times, because we're changing our lenses to see that I'm not the controller, I'm not the owner of anything or anybody. And the biggest struggle I see with what's going on in your life is that your focus is on what they're doing, and you can't control him. You can't control him. You can't, all you can do is work on yourself and be that shining example. I've been to places where I've tried to control my senses, especially when I was very new to bhakti, yet I wanted to indulge the senses, and everybody else around me was indulging the senses. And I'm just like frustrated, angry. Why are they doing that? Can't they see? But I myself wasn't peaceful. So you got to get to a place where, and you have to regulate that for yourself, where can I find my peace? And then who do I want to invite into my peace? Trying to change somebody to be like you, it just might not be their path. And especially within bhakti, it's like we have like a really niche market of a spiritual path that a lot of people just can't opt into. I mean, the general topics, control your senses and dancing and kirtan and listening to kirtan, but it gets more and more refined as you get into it. I think that lay off him and just work on yourself and work at being peace with yourself. And I think two things are going to happen is he's going to get inspired by your example, or he's going to be like, what happened to Holly? She's so boring. That's what happens when you become sattvic. You start to control your senses. You start to control what you're putting into the mind, what into the eyes, your ideas of recreation, your ideas of vacation, your ideas of pleasure. You like to rise early and go to bed early. You change as you develop from rajas and tamas, the mode of passion and ignorance, to sattva. And if people aren't ready for that change or up for that change, there are a lot of people who will just be like, you're crazy. You've lost your mind. And you got to be okay with that. Or they might be like, you know what? I've been looking for something like this. But it's hard to become Krishna conscious as a team, although it happens. That happens too. We even got some Zoomers, right? Todd Harris got inspired by his wife, Erica Schneider. Sometimes it just happens. And sometimes it's the lemon in the milk that just like separates the curds from the whey.
That's what I was thinking when I was hearing this. It's like there's shifts going on in Holly's life, right? Over the past 6 months.
Yeah.
And when you're going through that shifting, it's hard. Like there's certain things that our lives are anchored to, and it may be hard, as time passes, you look back and say, oh, back then, I guess what I'm saying is either this person is going to change, like be influenced by you, or maybe they're not, and if they're not, it's going to affect the relationship in some way. It might even separate it. That's a possibility.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that's like, it's hard to face in the moment as you're living through it. But then 3 years down the road, you look back and say, oh, I would have never thought I would be here right now, but I am, and I'm grateful. So I'm not saying Holly to walk away from this person. I'm not saying that, but it might end up like that. You don't know,
Well, a lot of times when we are in, like, for example, suppose I'm an alcoholic And that is going to influence who I choose to date. Now, if I'm an alcoholic and then I get 30, then I'm sober for 15 years, that's going to influence who I choose to date also.
Right.
So as I start to refine in America, we just like dive into relationships out of loneliness. And then we just get sort of like trapped in a box with these people, and we're trying to do our own changing, but it's hard to change when you're in a box with another person. So when we start to take some self-governing, what's it called? Self-governing?
Responsibility?
Self-responsibility,
Okay.
Self-governing. But when I'm self-governing for who I am and what I want to consume and the type of person I want to be, sovereignty, yes, Vivi, thank you. Then all of a sudden things start to shift, and we've created something within that box that the partner has to adjust to. And the partner might be like, all right, cool, whatever. Or I got to start finding myself then, when myself has nothing to do with her new self, and we've split apart. We have to be really convinced that Krishna is going to take care of you, and he's going to preserve what you have. He's going to add what you need, and he's going to take away what you don't need. And you have to have firm trust in that. And you are getting cradled by Krishna as you cradle him, Holly.
That's a great.
You're getting cradled by Krishna as he's cradling you. As you're cradling him.
You're really into the doll kind of thing today, right?
Yeah, the doll.
Cradle and
masks, dolls.
But another aspect of this I was thinking of, Raghunath, is something that like you as a parent probably has deeper realizations than I would. But like that kind of loving someone and realizing that you can't control them or help them make you can't make their decisions for them. It doesn't affect your love for them, but you can only try so much to convince someone. You can try and you can explain why you're living the way you do, why you feel it's wise. I mean, if you can't discuss those things openly, it's not much of a relationship. But you can't necessarily make someone make the same decisions. And it doesn't necessarily affect how much you love them, but sometimes part of love means having to watch someone go through the stuff that they go through it.
Sure. And there's anxiety again, watching them go through that. Lisa Tuttle on Zoom says, all my big relationship issues intimately and on the job go back to misalignment of core values. Yeah, that's why there's conscious dating now, or premarital counseling. Instead of like, we're going to wait till we hate each other's guts, then we're going to a marriage counselor. You have pre-marriage counselor where you go in, what do you want out of life? What religion do you want to raise the children? Do you want to have children? What's your sexual cycle? Are you spiritual? How do you feel?
Where do you see yourself
in 5 years from now?
Yeah.
What are your goals? Where would you like to retire? What do you think about retirement? Stuff like that.
The questions you never asked because you're
questions you never asked.
Caught up in your romance.
We fell in love, like you stumbled and fell in love, that type of romantic love. And then you got to untangle the granny knot, figure it all out. You like that? The granny knot? You know what a granny knot is?
I don't know. You've used that term before. I don't know exactly what
I do. Mara, you know what a granny knot is?
Heard of it, but I don't know how to do one.
Come on. Go back to Boy Scouts, people. Granny knot's just like a knot. It's not a knot. It's just like when the knots get all... it's not a real knot.
Thank you for explaining that.
And it's hard to get out. It's like when you get a knot in your shoelace and you can't get it out.
It's not a knot, but it's hard to get out.
Yeah. It's a granny knot. Is that a good analogy? I'm going to ask Banjo Mike.
I don't know what it is, so it's hard to tell.
Banjo Mike knows what a granny knot is. I'm positive of it. It's not a knot. It's a half hitch. Oh, so Banjo Mike is saying it is a knot. It's a half hitch.
It's a half hitch.
I thought it was just like a tangle.
Banjo Mike is he's a real
he's a Renaissance
guy.
Man.
He knows
he's a Renaissance man.
Yeah.
He knows things.
He knows
like
how to
this.
tie a knot. He knows how to make maple syrup.
He probably knows how to
make
tie
a
lots
banjo.
of knots. That's real masculinity.
Okay,
all right.
What's next?
What's next? I got a few knots. I just don't have as many as Banjo Mike. Harry Ball friends. This is from Laminia via Discord. You know what? I want my own Discord channel, Kaustubha. Can you arrange that?
I don't even know how to. I'm lost on Discord. Mara and I were trying to figure it out one day, right? We just couldn't figure out how to
We
get
used
in
to
there
add
anymore. It's like, it is what it
channels,
is at this point.
It's just
someone's
become this beast of all the Patreon members. Just
I think it's like
talking
a
about
robot
stuff.
that took over now, and it's like there's no way to control it anymore.
Anyway, this is from Laminia via the Discord beast.
Okay.
Haribo, friends.
Haribo?
In the Gita, it is taught to carry out duty without attachment to the fruits of our actions. And I
Correct.
can't help but relate to this, relate this to the present state of the working world today.
All right.
Many of us spend most of our lives in soulless jobs. Unless you're working in that toll, I thought the toll booth would be a soulless job,
Yeah, I flip it.
but you can flip it. But many people spend lives in soulless job. They haven't figured out how to Krishnaize it. That aren't fulfilling our life's purpose, but find ourselves stuck in because of obligation to that paycheck.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Or insurance. Sometimes people just keep a job because they need health insurance.
Okay.
Therefore, we are naturally in a position where we are working solely out of attachment to the fruit of the labor. Furthermore, the act of fulfilling what feels like our soul's purpose while abandoning all attachment to success or failure may seem like an irresponsible one way to financial ruin.
Yeah, it could happen that way.
Yeah. For example, let's say I am someone who feels that Krishna's calling is for me to become an artist and serve him through sharing my art with the world. But I'm working as a widget in an assembly line just to put food on the table and make rent. How could I find it possible to be motivated to wake up and to keep going to work if it weren't for the promise of the fruit of my paycheck? Also, if I'm truly meant to fulfill this duty without attachment to success or failure, does this mean it would actually be wise to give up my current stable position in favor of following my artistic calling, even though going down that path could potentially mean I wouldn't be able to pay my bills? Is the attachment to financial stability one that we should learn to abandon or become aloof towards? Or should I just abandon the attachment to my dream of becoming an artist and simply learn to become detached enough to continue working my current stable yet mindless job? I'm dying to know what job she has. Thank you for answering my questions, Prabhus. I appreciate everything you do.
Okay.
That's from Laminia.
I think the question kind of started out as like almost like asking for a friend, but at the end it sounded like Laminia's talking about her own job.
Her own job.
I'm
I
assuming.
get it. It sounds like she's an artist and she's struggling.
at
She
heart.
wants to do art, but she's got to pay rent.
Okay. So let's talk about it. She's speaking. I'm assuming Laminia is a female name. Anyone know for sure? Laminia, or is it even a real name? I'm not
It's
sure.
not a real name.
Okay.
Of course, it's a real name.
No, in other words, people on Discord have different.
Oh,
they-
you're right. They put on
Yeah.
fake
Handles.
names. Okay.
Yeah.
They put on handles.
Yeah.
It
So in
sounds
any
like
case-
a post USSR country, doesn't it? I'm from Laminia.
Could be. Okay. In any case, Laminia is bringing up Bhagavad Gita concepts and trying to apply them to their own life, right?
Yeah.
And that's what a noble thing to do. What a great thing to do. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But let's try to bring the focus in on them a little bit more clearly. Some of the things that are being brought up here are questions of attachment and detachment, right? Even like success and failure. So, and also concepts of dharma. What is one's dharma, and so on. It's so interesting, right? Ultimately, we all have when we speak of dharma, we're speaking of two different varieties of dharma. There's one variety of dharma that every living being shares. And ultimately that dharma is the dharma of the soul is to love and serve God, right? That's what we're designed to do. That's what we're meant to do. Every living being under any condition, that's what we're meant to ultimately do. That's our
Isn't
deeper
that
goal.
great? What a great
It's connection.
conception of a default. Your default
What did you call
is
it the other day? Pure soul theology.
pure soul theology.
Yeah.
It's a pure soul theology. Our nitya dharma, the eternal dharma. I love that. Is to serve and give love to God and everybody we meet.
And when we say it's nitya, it means it's eternal, and it's also indicating something that's eternal is absolute. In other words, it's not relative. It doesn't change under any circumstances. What age you are, where you're born, nothing. That's the Dharma for everyone. And then there's the temporary dharmas, the relative dharmas, the dharmas that we embrace for a certain amount of time and
I'm
then
a
let go.
mathematician.
Yeah, it could be I'm a
I'm a
mathematician.
leader. I'm a
Exactly.
metal worker. I'm a banjo maker.
It could be any of those. You're a banjo maker one day, and then at some point you retire from banjo making, maybe, you know. So those are other types of dharmas. And part of when we speak of those dharmas, those temporary dharmas, the Bhagavad Gita will also speak of those dharmas in relation to one's nature, which really means in relation to one's psychology. And the Bhagavad Gita will break that down to 4 basic categories of psychology. And Krishna will recommend that if your psychology is one, you're better off doing that dharma than someone else's dharma, which isn't prescribed, isn't geared for their particular psychology. If you're doing duties that are geared for your psychology well, it's really helpful. It helps you. It enhances your strengths and it helps counter your weaknesses, and in that way it becomes a purificatory yogic path. Now we live in a world that's all mixed up, you know, so it's less clear exactly what our temporary dharmas are and so on. But, you know, I think if you want to practice bhakti well, it's very advisable to have a clear idea of what are my temporary duties in life, right? And some of them should be clear, like I'm a mother, I'm a father, I need to do this well, right? That's a temporary duty. Like you may be not a mother one day and then suddenly you're a mother. And now you're taking on a new set of duties that are in relation to that. And it becomes really important. You see, that temporary dharma is seen in connection with the eternal dharma, right? In other words, by being a good mother, by being a good father, by being a good husband or wife, by being a responsible person in the business world and an ethical person in the business world, you know, these are all temporary dharmas, but I embrace them with a certain viewpoint and a certain contemplation that's meant to help uncover the eternal dharma, right? That's meant to help me fully. In other words, I'm being a really good, responsible mother. When my senses are calling me to go out and party tonight, I restrain them, right? I get myself under control and I focus myself on my duty to be a good parent tonight. Why do I do that? I do that in service to God. I'm doing that for God. I'm doing that as an offering to God that this little child that I'm taking care of, I see as also connected to God. And my dharma, my duty, is to give them all the care that they need so that they have the best opportunity that they can also reconnect and uncover their eternal dharma. So 2 mothers are doing the exact same activity, like in terms of caring for their child, but one of them is seeing it in terms of their eternal dharma, and in that way it's becoming effective in uncovering that. Whereas another may see it in terms of their own personal enjoyment. And that's where this topic that was being brought up about the fruits of one's work, right? Being detached from the fruits of one's work. Now, let's say that Lamina is working in this soulless job, you know, as a widget, you know, just like, I don't know, with, you know, in an assembly line, you know, just pulling a lever, you know, again and again or something like that. Now, one person is doing that because they are attached to the fruits of the work. They want the paycheck. And when they get that paycheck, they think, this is my paycheck, right? This is my paycheck to engage for me, for my senses, so that I can be happy by enjoying the things of the senses that I'm going to buy with my paycheck. That person is attached to the fruits of the work. Now, this is the point in Laminia's letter that I think in question, that I think needs a little bit more clarification, a little bit more clarity of focus. That just getting the paycheck doesn't mean that you're attached to the fruits of the work. You may not like the job, and you may only be doing it because you're getting the paycheck, but that doesn't mean that you see it as your paycheck and that you're attached to that paycheck. If at the end of the week or month or whatever, you get your paycheck and you think, this isn't mine, right? ultimately everything belongs to God. Let me engage this in the service of God. And my first service to God is to provide for my family, because that's the Dharma that I've embraced. When I got married, when I had children, I voluntarily accepted a particular Dharma, that I would care for my family and I would serve my family on behalf of God. Now when I get my paycheck and I'm thinking this paycheck is an offering to God. It's engaged in my service to God, right? And that's an entirely different concept. Even though you're getting the paycheck, you're not attached to the fruits of the work, whereas the other person was attached, right? You're not thinking it's my paycheck. You're thinking it's my offering to make to God. Ultimately, it all belongs to God. So sometimes it's just a different way of seeing things. It's not about doing something different, but it's the way that you understand what you're doing and the motive behind what you're doing that makes all the difference, in yoga, makes all the difference in bhakti. So that being said, if you're doing a soulless job like that, if you're doing it with the right motive and you're doing it with detachment from the fruits of that work, it still becomes a powerful path of yoga. But the idea is, but if that's the case, and let's say, okay, by having children, I'm just using this as one example, but let's say by having children, I've committed myself for the next 20 years, and really beyond, but like at least financially, let's say for the next 18, 20, 22 years, whatever. I've a little smile there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, committed. We're in this.
Yeah, you've opted in now, and you've accepted. You've taken a responsibility. That's your temporary dharma, right? You carry it out. I'd imagine for a parent, on one hand, that seems like forever, but on the other hand, the parents say, "Oh my God, that time just flew right by." Like like the enjoyment, the embrace and the enjoyment that we get out of the relationship seems like it goes, zips by really quick, and the responsibility seems like, oh my God, that's like never going to end, But that's all just relative in terms of how we see things. But once you made that commitment and you had that child, you accepted the Dharma, and now you live up to that Dharma, even if it's unpleasant. You live up to it, right? Even if it seems soulless, well, then you endure that austerity, and that's called being dharmic, right? Now, whether you should be a musician or an artist or not, that's another question, right? That's another question. But you have that responsibility, and you've taken, and don't think that because you're doing that, it means that you're attached to the fruits, right? If you're thinking, I wouldn't be doing this job if it wasn't for the paycheck, that doesn't mean that you're attached to the fruits if you make an offering of the fruits of it. And then you can do all the best you can to we spoke about this a little bit last week, right? Like if you're at work, in terms of all of your relationships, you can be practicing yoga at every step, and how you respond to people, that you're thinking about God within your own heart and thinking about God within the hearts of all your coworkers and everyone on that mindless assembly line. It may not be ideal. Now, so all that being said, there was also a question about success or failure. And I believe that the phrase that Lemania said was being attachment to success or failure. It's not exactly, it says here, furthermore, the act of fulfilling what feels like our soul's purpose while abandoning all attachment to success or failure may seem like an irresponsible one way to financial ruin. But let's not think of it exactly as attachment to success or failure. Think of even-mindedness through success and failure. That's what the Gita is getting at, right? The Bhagavad Gita says that have an even mind through success and failure. I'm going to do my duty, and today may be a good day or a bad day, right? Today may seem like success or it may seem like failure. I'm not going to be super elated, because things are going successfully today, or super depressed because they're not going so well today. I know what's right. I'm going to do what's right, and I'm going to keep an even mind through the ups and downs of it. Keeping an even mind, samatvam, through success or failure is what the Gita is calling on us to do. Now, all that being said, whether one should drop what they're doing to become an artist or not, that's the kind of thing the Bhagavad Gita it's not going to, it's not going to, it's 700 verses. It can't get into the minutia of everybody's circumstance. And that's where, but what the Shastra does is it shows us the importance of seeking good guidance in life, of having people that we respect, people that are learned, people that are real yogis, people that care about others, that are selfless, and in seeking their input and advice, and that could be everyone from one's friend to one's parents to one's guru, to different types of mentors that could help us make a decision. Is it wise? Some people want to become the artist because it is their nature. Some people want to become the artist because they just don't want to do the other kind of boring work, So all of these things are they're nuanced questions, and they require like an individual kind of application. The Gita is going to tell us, though, it tells Arjuna, your qualification is to work in this world, but never be attached to the fruits, right? The whole thing is an offering. And never consider yourself to be the cause of the results of your activities, which goes back to our last question. And never be attached to not doing your duty. And that's really important. This is real important, that if you have for instance, if you have a family and you have financial, responsibility, to walk away from that because I want to be an artist or something like that, that could be problematic. That could be a walking away from Dharma. It may not be, but it could be. And so it's something that one wants to consider very carefully and get, you really need good advice for that. You really need someone to help you. It's beautiful if people in this day and age can be engaged in a way that's totally harmonious with their nature. We live in a world that's it gets more and more, what's the word I'm looking for? As the corporate culture, just becomes, it used to be like, thousands of people had their own bookstore. Now it's like Barnes and Noble, it's like,
right.
It used to be the kind of thing where like you would start a bookstore and you would design it the way that you wanted it. And you would order certain books and put them in the window because you really valued them and treasured them. And you felt like you're putting your heart into something. And now it's like, I'm a manager at Barnes and Noble. It's like,
right.
You were all getting
This
squeezed.
is the window display. The window display has been paid for by Simon and Schuster. We have no
Yeah, right. Exactly.
homogenized, Lee says, homogenized, monocropped.
Yeah. So that's the unfortunate part about the world that we live in. It's getting more and more and more like that. And I can understand in between the lines of Lamania's question. I feel that, in other words, it's like, I don't want to live that life. I want a life of more freedom. Now, maybe you should be pursuing that wholeheartedly. Maybe you should be walking away from what you're doing and if you're willing to live as simply as possible so that you can make this work financially. Or maybe you've made choices in the past that have locked you into a certain responsibility that you have to take, that should be the primary consideration. And you have to think of that first. So these kind of questions are never easy to answer. They're all individual. But in any case, whether you're going to be in the mindless, soulless assembly line, or whether you're going to be like the freewheeling artist out there, in any case, the fruits are not for you. The fruits are offered, and you do it with an even mind, and you do it with detachment. And that's what the Bhagavad Gita is calling on us to do. All right?
Yes.
Now we got a question for you, Raghunath.
We're over time, brother.
Are we? Oh, my God.
9:05. Right. I was going to ask you if you knew the 8 Shiranjivas. How's that for a hot seat question?
No,
the 8
I don't.
Shiranjivas, the eternal souls, beings who are alive on earth that will live through Kali Yuga.
Oh.
You probably got some.
Well,
write them on the board if you know them.
I'd be guessing. Is Vyas one of them?
Vyasadeva, yep. Still alive, lives in the cave. You can't see him.
What are they living past?
Hanuman. Roger Tompkins got Hanuman. Yes.
What exactly we're looking for now? They live beyond.
These people are still living, even though we hear about them in the ancient stories.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Hanuman
Mara, you got one?
Is Narada Muni one of them?
It seems like he should be, but he's not.
Well, are these earth beings or something?
Yeah, they're actually on Earth. Bali Maharaj, Parshuram, Markandeya Rishi. Ashwatthama. Although
That's
my
I was
son
going to
says
say
Ashwatthama
Ashwatthama.
is-
I was going to say Ashwatthama.
Yeah,
He's
my son
cursed.
said Ashwatthama. He had cursed, and he could only live for 2,000 years, something like that.
No, it's like way
Kripacharya.
beyond that. He's like living
Yeah,
like
Kripacharya.
Kripacharya, okay.
And Vibhishan.
Well, there you go.
Pretty good. Yep. Gopal Krishna Vedavyas. That was the first one. Well, that's how we're gonna wrap up the show with some good little trivia. And
I gotta get
that's
some my
it.
pores going here.
Oh, we don't even have any takeaways. We don't do takeaways today.
No, because it's Saturday. But we got a big interview tomorrow. And a big yugna.
Got a big thing tomorrow with Malachi. Excited for that. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us. If you're listening on Facebook, welcome to our little party. We do this every Saturday and Sunday, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, New York time. And you can join us, or you can get on Zoom so we can see you and spy at your apartment. Look around. What do they got on their walls? How do they decorate it? Looking at Sarah Koretsky and what do they got on that back wall hanging there?